Rampancy is described as the terminal state that an artificial intelligence enters when it behaves contrary to its programming, develops a longing for power, or builds contempt for its makers. Rampancy can manifest in virtually any self-aware technological intelligence, being a possible outcome for human, Covenant, and even Forerunner AI. In the case of human AIs, though, this condition is exclusive to the smart variety, constructs that were mostly made from the mapping of a recently deceased human, and generally occurs once an AI has been in operation for 7 years. Sadly, when rampancy occurs, there is almost no way to restore the AI to its previous state, and the only solution is to destroy it before it harms itself or others around it. This process is known as final dispensation. And while there have been numerous attempts to cure or reverse rampancy, they were mainly theoretical or could not be implemented for the vast majority of AIs. Originating from a Jiralhane donor, Iratus is the first of his kind banished AI who was created by the human artificial intelligence company Lux Voluspa. His existence was revealed during a cyber attack on the facility where he was housed, and banished forces were able to gain possession of his data matrix. He was then relocated and tasked with the management of banished shipbreaking operations on the moon of Camber. After some time, Spartan 4's Sigrid Eklund and Hugh Din were deployed to the shipbreaking facility, where they learned of the AI and were able to detain him on Din's neural interface. This compromised both the Spartan's armor and his cognitive functions, but also allowed Iratus to access his memories, which he used to antagonize and demoralize him. Spartan Eklund was able to commandeer Phantom and get the two back to the Avery J. Johnson Academy, where it was determined that they could trick Iratus to leave Din's neural interface through a series of digital simulations. This was ultimately a success, and he was confined. But for reasons unclear, Iratus again escaped confinement and went on to gain access to the Academy's systems and local Oni archives. He then learned the histories of each generation of the Spartan programs and destroyed any means of escape for the UNSC personnel on the planet after revealing the location of the Academy to the Banished. Sharing a name with the mythological dwarven blacksmith who forged Thor's hammer, MJOLNIR, the Brokkr armor mechanism is a multi-axis armor assembly system which was produced by the Office of Naval Intelligence's Materials Group, and utilizing a number of gyro mounts with handles, footholds, and several arms and clamps, the Brokkr assists with the removal and mounting of MJOLNIR-powered assault armor onto Spartans' tech suits. And while it is known that Spartans can put on and remove their armor by hand, with some assistance and the correct tools of course, the Brokkr device is an automated and much more efficient method. While it largely saw deployment on the UNSC Infinity and Anvil Station, there are a few other locations throughout the galaxy with access to the Brokkr mechanism, such as the hidden Oni facility underneath the Avery J. Johnson Academy of Military Science, or Oni's Ilex facility on an undisclosed planet. The Halbashi Workshop Mutilator is an over-under double-barreled shotgun which was commissioned by the banished chieftain Atticus, and it made its debut in 2560, just before the banished invasion of the Avery J. Johnson Academy of Military Science on the planet of Nyssa. And like is seen with most Jiralhane-made weaponry, this weapon utilizes shells filled with metal spike pellets for ammunition, which scatter into a wide spread when fired. The weapon also has 2 firing modes, with the standard mode firing only one of the 2 shells when triggered, and the second firing both shells together. The user can easily switch between these 2 modes by pulling back on the foregrip, with the current mode being indicated on a display just above it. Though the key feature of this weapon is actually its integration of gravity impellers on the weapon's barrel, being pulled directly from the Halbashi Workshop's gravity hammer design. This addition allows the user to swing the Mutilator like they would a gravity hammer and unleash a concussive force upon impact. Halo Infinite's map Breaker is set in a banished shipbreaking facility located in the Chiltift Basin on the moon of Camber. And for those who aren't familiar, Camber was once a human colony world that acted as a key manufacturing site for UNSC fleet materials. However, when the moon was glassed by Thelvadamy's fleet of Particular Justice in 2542, the UNSC were forced to abandon it and all of its resources. Then, years later, the Banished arrived, setting up bases of operation in several of the destroyed fleet depots, deploying large overhead plasma drills to melt down the precious titanium remains of UNSC vessels. This facility is also the same location where Spartans Sigrid Eklund and Hugh Din discovered the existence of the banished AI Iratus as he had been managing operations there. Halo Infinite's map Aquarius is set in one of the many facilities owned by Aquarius Terraforming Solutions. This facility in particular boasting a number of advanced and experimental technologies, which highlight the company's specialization in water testing machinery and various agricultural growing methods. Not much can be gleaned as to the location for this facility, but knowing that the company has spent the better part of the last decade assisting in the re-terraforming and recolonization of glassed worlds, there's a high likelihood that this facility is on one which now depends on its critical infrastructure. In fact, prior to the Cortana event, Aquarius Terraforming Solutions was selected to help manage the ongoing terraforming efforts on the planet of Reach, so there's even a possibility that this facility could be located there. Lux Voluspa is a human technology firm which specializes in artificial intelligence. Their most notable work being the covert research done into the creation of smart AIs, which are based on the brains of non-human donors. And while it's unclear who sanctioned this research or how they went about obtaining their test subjects, no external parties were involved. But breakthroughs were made, and the first non-human AI, Iratus, was created from the brain of a Jiralhane donor. Soon after, though, he broke containment and his data matrix was extracted by banished forces. This attack left the status of Lux Voluspa and its staff unknown, but I can't help but wonder where they were at in creating AIs from other species, or if the banished were successful in stealing the means to make them on their own. So, believe it or not, the United States no longer exists in the Halo universe, and it's been since replaced by the United Republic of Northern America, being an amalgamation of the nations of Canada, Mexico, and the political remnants of the United States. Now, the timeline for things is not well established, but the dissolution of the United States happened sometime before 2524, with the various states and political remnants operating as independent entities for some time. And we don't have any information onto why this dissolution occurred, but it could have easily been due to political, monetary, or territorial disputes. Either way, many of these state remnants would come back together and work alongside Canada and Mexico to establish the URNA. As is depicted on a map featured in Halo Escalation, some of the state lines and provinces that made up the former countries of the URNA were altered. Around the year of 2540, New Phoenix became the fourth most populated city, with Chicago in third, Los Angeles second, and New York becoming number one. The URNA is also home to the UNSC's supreme headquarters, likely due to the US's long history and association with the United Nations. And the Office of Naval Intelligence also maintains a branch here, housed in Boston, Massachusetts. And the regions that used to make up the US would be the site for several alien attacks throughout the Human Covenant War and post-war era. Examples of which being the Covenant's assault on Cleveland, Ohio in 2552, and the Didax attack on and composure of citizens of New Phoenix in 2557. Named after the legendary predator of St. Helios, the HELIOSKRILL armor set is one of the rarest and most unique in the Halo universe. Being manufactured in very limited supply by the Kolar Manufactorum in the state of Vadam, it was the first MJOLNIR armor not designed by humans, being crafted instead by a female Sangheili artisan armorer prodigy who was inspired to rival the finest of human designs. The armor utilizes materials and technologies found in traditional Sangheili combat harnesses, most notably the pinch fusion reactor and nanolaminate armor plating. HELIOSKRILL first saw implementation with the MJOLNIR Gen 2 platform, but was recently redesigned for compatibility with the Gen 3, and there are some notable differences in the two versions, with the original having additional armor plating on the forearms, and the Gen 3 variant implementing the Stormclaw mask, which is a visor armor plate attachment which resembles elements of the helmets worn by past Arbiters. The possibility for the acquisition of this armor set has sometimes been used as an incentive by Spartan commanders for victory in wargame simulations. Now, one of the many priorities for humanity after the Human Covenant War was the re-establishment and reclaiming of their many abandoned colony worlds and outposts. The most common issue they encountered was that many of these worlds were rendered largely uninhabitable due to Covenant glassing. Although with enough time and effort, it was believed that they could be re-terraformed, though this would require immense resources and manpower that the unified Earth government could rarely spare. So, in the interest of quickly reclaiming that territory, one of the solutions adopted by the UEG was allowing megacorporations to carry out the bulk of these efforts. This meant authorizing the militarization of private security forces and colonial subsidiaries such as the Liang Dortmund Corporation, BXR Mining Corporation, Aquarius Terraforming Solutions, and so on. And one great example is the Liang Dortmund Corporation's efforts on the once lush moon of Meridian, where we actually get to see some of these deglassing techniques in action. Here they're utilizing high beam intensity harvesters to melt and remove material in order to regain access to the planet's surface. And while it's not shown, they've likely also employed atmospheric scrubbers and condensers to help clean and restabilize the atmospheric conditions, as well as begin the process of reforming bodies of water, which had all evaporated from the immense heat. It was also said that these settlements had installed filter devices to remove glass particles from the air. These same kind of efforts are certainly underway across the dozens of other glassed worlds, with other notable instances being Africa back on Earth and the planet of Reach. So I recently touched on humanity's recolonization and re-terraforming efforts following the glassing of dozens of their colony worlds during the Human Covenant War. And as I mentioned, we've seen a couple instances of what these efforts look like in the lore, but something I forgot to touch on was the overall time frame on how long deglassing techniques take. And while there's no formula really given to us, in 2530 it was estimated by a group of AIs known as the Assembly that re-terraforming a glass world would take anywhere from 110 to 300 years. But of course this time frame could vary depending on how much of a planet's surface was actually glassed. And when you consider the recent technological steps that humanity has taken following the war, and the constant reverse engineering of numerous Forerunner technologies, the time needed could have changed significantly. And it can be argued that this is actually what happened, because in the final cinematic of Halo Reach, the planet was depicted at least being partially re-terraformed by 2589, meaning that in this specific case, the deglassing process only took 37 years. The Covenant's campaign against humanity demonstrated one of their most effective and age-old methods used in pacifying their enemies: glassing. And while definitely a strategic weapon when used correctly, glassing was historically treated as a religious ritual. Preparations for these plasma bombardments were generally initiated once air superiority had been established above a planet, and only after any Forerunner artifacts or items of interest had been retrieved. Then a fleet master would assemble his fleet, and after receiving the blessing from a minor prophet or minister, would begin the act. Oftentimes, this began with the etching of a Covenant glyph into the planet's surface, but this would quickly become a highly coordinated effort, with ships completely blanketing areas in plasma to devastate population centers and even evaporate entire oceans. The Covenant would then retrieve a shard from the planet's surface and hang it in the halls of High Charity, and in the case of humanity, there were many. The energy required for glassing a planet is immense, even for a Tier 2 civilization like the Covenant. But through the combined use of energy projectors, bombardment guns, and excavation beams, the plasma produced can be upwards of 100 meters in length and is as powerful as a nuclear blast. And the immense heat from them would turn rock, soil, buildings, plant life, and most definitely people into a slurry of molten material, which when hardened, produced a silicate glass known as laketroling. And the environmental effects of this destruction are almost instantaneous, superheating the planet's atmosphere, evaporating entire bodies of water, blanketing entire regions in ash, causing erratic weather patterns, and leaving large amounts of radiation in its wake, all of which could lead to the complete collapse of a planet's ecology and extinction on an unprecedented scale. In a recent summary video, I covered the animated film Midnight in the Heart of Midlothian, and many things make it a great story, but one of the things that has always stuck out to me, and something I even bring up in the summary, is the sheer size of the protagonist, ODST Sergeant Michael Baird. Because when looking at this frame from later in the film, we can see that he's almost as tall as the elite, maybe like half a foot shorter or less. And when you consider that Sangheili on average range from 7'4" to 8'6" in height, that would put him somewhere around 7 foot tall. And to put that into perspective, the Master Chief is 6'11". So really, Baird was the size of an NBA player, or for the sake of Halo, a Spartan 2. The Agitator-Class Armor is a banished creation which can be paired with any MJOLNIR-powered assault armor, the Agitator helmet in particular being able to function with a chassis even if UNSC security locks are in effect. And besides the helmet's compatibility with the shock-treated visor attachment, there is not much known about the armor's technology or its components, only that there are additional pieces which make it a complete set, such as the Agitator Heartplate chest armor and the Agitator belt utility. Perhaps if Anvil or UNSC personnel were able to acquire the armor from Venetian mercenaries, more could be learned. Spartan 4 Sigrid Eklund began her military service in the UNSC Army Rangers, where she worked alongside local militia groups on Covenant-occupied worlds. She would later receive the rank of Sergeant, with the highlight of her early career being her deployment to the planet of Concord in 2551. Here she led the clearing of a Covenant emplacement in the Caravel province, and then protected civilians as they fled to the Hinterlands region's main city. Her service record led to her recruitment into the Spartan 4 program and placement on Fireteam Crimson. Then excelling in all of her assignments, June A266 recommended that her talents could be used in more isolated endeavors. She was later paired with Spartan Hudin, and the two would be sent on high-importance missions deep in enemy territory. At some point between 2559 and 2560, these lone wolves were deployed to the now banished controlled moon of Camber to monitor banished shipbreaking operations. Eklund began to grow suspicious of this location, and further investigation led to the discovery of a banished archive and the first of its kind banished AI calling himself Iratus. After their escape and a series of events which took place at the Avery J. Johnson Academy, Iratus was contained. But this was only temporary, as he escaped confinement and infected the Academy's systems. And while Eklund was leading transport preparations, Iratus fired 9 surface-to-air missiles at the hangar's location. She did suffer injuries, but ultimately survived the attack. She and the other Spartans of the Academy were then extracted by June A266 and Rosenda 344 during the Banished invasion of Nyssa, and were said to have later regrouped at Anvil Station. Sharing a resemblance with the armor worn by feudal-era samurai, the HYABUSA-Mjolnir-powered assault armor was a critical innovation brought about by collaboration between Project Mjolnir and the Japan-centered RKD group. And while Project Hayabusa was originally developed independently of Mjolnir without the knowledge of the Spartans or the armor's development, the RKD group would make connections with Oni's materials group and propose the implementation of their designs to the UNSC Ordnance Committee by late 2536, with their proprietary use of advanced materials capable of reducing the weight of Gen 1 Mjolnir armor by nearly a third. And while it's believed that there were armor designs made which could have been compatible with the Mjolnir Gen 2 platform, they never saw development. However, following the introduction of the Gen 3 platform, RKD pushed forward with their YAIBA initiative, which led to the new and improved Hayabusa helmet. Refined through years of covert weapon testing and battle analysis, the helmet brought with it new features such as electromagnetic distortion technologies, AI-formulated metamaterial surface treatments, and specialized geometry. The stealth-oriented and stylistic features of Hayabusa remain a key technical and marketing differentiator, as is demonstrated with the Sigma Dragon Reconnaissance Helmet module, which provides additional cutting-edge reconnaissance and surveillance functionality with minimal impact on the suit's emission profile. Commonly known as the Cole Protocol, Emergency Priority Order 098831A-1 is a UNSC directive first enacted by Admiral Preston Cole to prevent the Covenant from discovering Earth or the inner colonies. Ideally, it was intended to prevent retrieval of coordinates from nav systems, but also restricted any retreating ship from directly traveling to Earth or the inner colonies via slipspace, and even called for the self-destruction of a vessel if necessary. Additionally, if an artificial intelligence was on board a vessel but was unable to be extracted, it would need to be purged. Subsection 7 also stated that no UNSC personnel were to return to human-controlled space or UNSC installations with Covenant ships, weaponry, or technology, though it would seem this particular subsection was more of a technicality, as throughout the war there are several known instances where Spartans in particular retrieved Covenant ships and technology for study, or kept them as souvenirs. But in theory, any violations of this or the other articles of Cole Protocol would be considered treason. And the policy was so effective that in the 27 years of war against the Covenant, the location of Earth or the other colonies was never acquired through direct data retrieval attempts. Instead, the Covenant only stumbled upon them by accident, found them through tracking devices on ships, or located them through the presence of Forerunner artifacts found by a luminary. Volitional AI, better known as smart AI, are the most advanced form of human-made artificial intelligence, with this variety being noted as having no limit on their memory processor matrix, meaning that they can learn a great deal of information while being able to adapt and learn from situations. And rather than creating them through strings of code, smart AIs are made through the process of mapping and scanning a brain's neural pathways. However, this process destroys the neural tissue of a donor's brain, which is typically why it's done on a deceased host. Though in the case of Cortana, Calmia, or the weapon, they were made from the brains of living flash clones of Dr. Catherine Halsey, albeit this method was highly unethical and illegal. But it's because of this use of a brain that the AI will inherit the thoughts, memories, and even feelings from their donor, which all influence their personality, manifesting as mannerisms and characteristics. The major downside to smart AI is that they have an operational lifespan of only 7 years before a terminal condition known as rampancy begins to take hold. Generally, once they've reached this point, they'll begin to sever vital neural linkages, which causes erratic behavior and deviation from their directives. They quickly become a hazard to themselves and those around them, and if they do not do so on their own, they are prepared for final dispensation, which means their termination. Active camouflage is a term that refers to a myriad of optical camouflage technologies that can conceal a user or object from visual perception, and it does this by bending and refracting light around the object to mimic the surrounding area. In the case of personal camouflage technologies, the user may appear relatively concealed to the untrained eye, but can be spotted by a telltale shimmering effect. Excessive movement or dust accumulation can also reveal the user as well, and even disrupt the technology if significant enough. Additionally, camouflaged individuals are still detectable through motion trackers or infrared sensory equipment due to the massive heat generated from its use, and the presentation of this technology varies, ranging from a pyramidal or spherical energy shielding container, which releases a suspended cloaking field that envelops the user once opened, to armor enhancement modules such as the Type 3 Refractor Dissonance Modifier cloaking device, creating an armor-wide cloaking field upon activation. There are other forms of active camouflage technology as well, such as the human-made photoreactive panels employed on some ships and early semi-powered infiltration armors worn by the Spartan 3s, though the acquisition and reverse engineering of Covenant technology led to several innovations with future Mjolnir armor generations and other unique cloaking technologies. But again, active camouflage is not just limited to individuals. Other variants, often alongside other external stealth technologies, can be used to conceal vehicles, infrastructure, and even entire armies. Non-volitional AI, or dumb AI as they're better known, are a form of human artificial intelligence which is made through traditional methods of coding or programming. Really not that different than the practices we see now in the 21st century. And while the name certainly contradicts their high level of intelligence, they are significantly more limited in their functionality than, say, a smart AI, and do not possess the ability to perceive or even adapt to a situation like they could. Though that's not to say they can't problem solve, but their actions instead reflect a series of pre-programmed responses or scenarios. The one thing that dumb AI can hold over the smart variety, though, is that their lifespans are not limited to just 7 years. Instead, their operational lifetime is determined by the longevity and endurance of their hardware. And while there are several classes and generations of dumb AI, they are most commonly deployed to handle everyday tasks, such as managing a factory's operations or a city's infrastructure. They also cannot deviate from their set limits and don't inherently develop a personality. Instead, they are specifically designed with those things in mind. The Dazreme are an aquatic race of intelligent Piscine creatures native to the ocean world of Reem. Having built a thriving civilization around sunken foreigner cities, they repurposed their technology and architecture to their benefit, and it's because of this that they were one of the Covenant's most closely guarded secrets. And while the timing is unclear, it is known that their homeworld was stumbled upon by Covenant relic hunters in the past, who had discovered the planet to be home to one of the largest deposits of Forerunner artifacts known at the time. Further investigation then revealed that the Dazreme species had mastered this technology in ways that left even the hierarchs in awe. The Sanshayum were able to broker an alliance with them in time, and the Dazreme, leveraging their understanding of Forerunner technology to their advantage, would be entered into the fold of client races known as the Covenant Fringe. But the knowledge and capabilities of this species created a complicated situation. Concerned with how new member species of the Covenant might question the Dazreme's place in the Great Journey, the Sanshayum went to great lengths to keep their existence secret, even going as far as to execute entire crews and escorts after diplomatic visits to Reem. Even before the downfall of the Covenant, very few knew of the planet's location, let alone the Dazreme. So with the near extinction of the Sanshayum, their existence is almost entirely unknown to the greater universe, and perhaps may never be known. Terraforming is one of humanity's key tenets when establishing a viable colony amongst the stars. In terms of moons or planets, this means the manipulation of their terrain, atmosphere, or climate to create suitable living conditions for human survival. And the UNSC employs various methods to go about this. Most notable being orbital bombardment with asteroids to create a secondary artificial mantle around the world's crust, or similarly, the mining and launching of ice from moons or asteroids at a planet, which helps in the forming of new bodies of water and an atmosphere. In most cases, though, they'll target naturally habitable planets with pre-existing atmospheres, oceans, fauna, flora, etc. This does mean that there is less work needed, but these kind of worlds are exceedingly rare, and the selective practice often leaves these colonies more remote and more isolated from the rest of humanity. Additionally, efforts are not usually wasted on volcanic worlds due to their volatility. Yet there are some colonies, such as Iratus 2, who go a step even above the terraforming process and artificially control their local atmospheric conditions to maintain consistently pleasant weather patterns.